Welcome to the Lights and Sirens podcast. I am your host, Bernie Robinson, and it feels good to be back. I've been away for a little bit, but we're back and we're ready to go. So today will be the first installment of what I call my Superwomen Series. And you may ask, what is a Superwoman? I have one here with me today, and I'm going to tell you about her. She is a mom. She's a New York City paramedic. She's a critical care paramedic. She's a paramedic supervisor. She's a recent master's degree recipient. She also has been an emergency medical dispatcher. She's a mentor. She worked with me on many different projects, including establishing a diversity and inclusion committee, among others, in our department where we work together right now. She is an emerging leader in the healthcare field and a rising star. Today's Superwoman is my colleague and my good friend, Tara McEvoy. Tara, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Bert?
Good. Welcome. Welcome to the Lights and Sirens podcast. So, I've known Tara for a long time. We work together now at the same organization, but prior to this organization, we both worked at New York City EMS together, Emergency Medical Services. And I'm talking about back in the old days when the uniforms were green and white, pre-merger with FD&Y. So, there's a lot of history here, but there's also a lot of, new things that we're doing that are just, you'll hear about, I'm sure, as we talk. All right, so Tara, tell us, how did you get into EMS? Tell us your story.
How I got into EMS was because my sister thought I had no direction in life.
Okay.
I was working 4 different jobs at the same time, and I didn't I liked waitressing, but there was not a whole lot of benefit to waitressing. So my sister worked for EMS, and she's like, you need to take an EMT class. At least this way, you have something. And so she convinced me that I should take an EMT class, and I kept telling her that I don't think I'm going to like this because I didn't want to touch people. And so I did it. I applied for the city. I got called. I went through the academy, and I tried to quit after my first job. And
really?
Yeah.
Your first call.
The very first call in the city. It was.
I talked about that in one of the earlier episodes, that there are people that go in, they join, start, and their first day they're done and never come back.
That was exactly what I tried to do.
So what happened?
Well, it was Lower Manhattan, and it was Delancey Street, like Delancey and Clinton.
Lower East Side. Uh-huh.
Yes, and there was this young lady who was a prostitute, and it was right when the HIV, the AIDS epidemic was happening, so she had a big oozing ulcer, and I had to sit in the back, and and I had to wrap it up, and we drove her to Beekman, and I got back in the ambulance afterwards, and I said to my partner, who was this very rough and tumble woman who was taking no crap, and she's like, I said, could you take me back to that station? And she laughed at me and said, no. What the heck is wrong with you? I was like, that was a hooker. I'm from Long Island, and I had to sit and talk to her. I think I need to go home now. And she was like, absolutely not. So I told her I was going to walk home, and I walked back to the station, and she started laughing at me because she told me she wasn't driving me back there. I'm like, well, I'm going to walk. And she starts laughing. She's like, and how are you going to get there? Do you know where you are? And we didn't have cell phones and GPS and everything then. So it was like, well, no. So she hit the 98, and she kept taking me to jobs and wouldn't take me back. And the next day, I was supposed to work with her again, and I told her I wasn't coming back. And she's like, I will drive to your house, and I'll drag you here. You're coming back. So I was afraid, and I came back.
Okay, so, and the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah. I blame it all on her.
Oh, man. Okay, so that's an interesting start to a career, definitely. But since we're talking about that, why don't you describe your journey in your career? How did you get to where you are right now? All those things I just described, how did you get there? Walk us through that.
So, there I was this EMT who was really unsure of what I was doing, and I stayed in Lower Manhattan for 6 years as an EMT before I finally decided, okay, it's time. It's time to go try to take this medic class. And I took the screening, and then everything in the world stopped because they were going to merge us with Fidney. And
yep,
so
I remember that.
I had a partner who I needed to get away from because we were forever going into CCU because people complained about him a lot.
Okay.
And I decided to go teach at the academy. So I did that test. I passed that test. I was teaching at the academy. And then they started the screening again for paramedic, and because they were going to put in FIDNY Medic 1. And I think it was 17 seats available for 1,700 eligible people.
Wow.
Took the test, and I got myself in there. And from there, I went to Brooklyn. I stayed at Brooklyn a while. Then I wound up leaving the city because, I think we could talk about the merge later. And I left the city. I went to another organization, and I worked there in dispatch as a paramedic. I worked at all the different divisions in there. And then I got married and had kids, so I went per diem. And then per diem, I think I was per diem for like 11 years, but I was still working in everything. I was still a medic on the road. I was a dispatcher inside. I was whatever they needed me to do.
Right.
I did a little quality too. And then a supervisor posting happened, and my kids were a little bit older, and it was time. So I applied. I got it, and they made me be a critical care paramedic. So I did the critical care paramedic class, which is interesting.
Yes.
And
we actually couldn't be supervisors without that certification.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I have the critical care. And I do the calls.
Yes.
And
oh, yeah.
and then I know you mentioned my master's. So somewhere in there, I had this mentor, this guy, Bernard Robinson, who told me, why aren't you in school? And I said, I finished school. I have my bachelor's. But Tara, why aren't you in school? So because of you, I proudly got my master's.
Excellent. And I'm very glad you did.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we did talk a little bit earlier about FDNY, EMS, and the merger. Everybody out there, they know I talk about this, that about 25 years ago now, it's been this year, I think, still the 25th anniversary of that merger.
That's right.
So as somebody who worked for the city, during the merger, what are your thoughts on the merger of New York City EMS, HHC, and FDNY?
So my thoughts on it, I've never been shy about announcing that I think Rudy Giuliani ruined my job when he made us merge with them.
Okay.
It was a rough thing, especially because being a woman who's now merged into the fire department. It was really hard because the firemen really never had to deal with women before. And at that time, I was still working at the academy. And so we would get sent to the Rock, which is where the fire academy is.
Far Rockaway.
No,
not the Rock.
Randall's Island.
Randall's Island.
Randall's Island. And now you're working with firemen who are instructors, but you would have, it was called the cycle, and it was the cycle of all like the firemen who've been firemen for 800 years or however many they are now, who now had to learn first responder stuff. They were, what were they? CFRs.
CFR, Certified First Responders. Yes, and defibrillation.
They did defibrillation, yeah. So we had them, and we would have our probie class. So you had like two different groups of people. The probies were wonderful because they were new. They had no idea. They didn't have to deal with like the history that they get ingrained. But the firemen who had been around for a really long time did not handle women well. They were, we were young too. Like you're in your 20s,
right? So
he has old men dealing with these young girls, and it was never smooth. There was one fireman who was it was me and another young girl teaching. I think we were teaching splinting or just whatever it was at that moment, and he kept making really like crude remarks. Really like bad, where it
like were these like bad jokes or
no, kind of like
not a joke,
like what he kind of wanted to do to you, kind of thing.
Okay.
And so I looked at him at one point finally because I had enough, and and we were always taught like don't be rude to them. They're trying to deal with you had to pamper them. It wasn't about like you just had to suck it up. And I don't remember what he said anymore because I think I blocked it, but I said to him, do you have a daughter? And he goes, yeah, why? I said, well, because you're like my father's age, so you're probably, your daughter's probably around my age. I wonder how you'd feel if my father was talking to your daughter the way you're talking to me. And he like turned red, he leaves. So, and he's like yelling that, how dare I say stuff like that? So I went to my bosses. I'm like, listen, I have a big problem with this guy. And I explained it all. He made a complaint about me, and I got in trouble that I made him feel bad. They wanted me to apologize to him, and I wouldn't, so I just stayed in trouble.
Wow.
So that was That's my thoughts on the merger. It was really rough.
Listen, you were dealing with that on the academy side of, during the training of it, and then out in the field, out on the road, we were dealing with it as well.
Yeah.
They didn't want to really be there on the calls. It was a forced marriage, and they didn't want to do it. We didn't want to be a part of them. And that kind of is still an undercurrent,
I think back then it would have made, if they were going to merge us with somebody, it would have made more sense to be merged with the police department, because that was who we dealt with all the time. And they deal with women because they had female cops for years and years.
So on that same vein, right? Even just being a woman in this field in general, even just EMS in general, we'll talk about. There weren't many women then either, and
No.
the language, the things that were said to women, in front of women, about women then, are different now, because now you will get checked on it a lot quicker. But you guys went through a lot. When I think about the stuff I remember,
they thought they could touch you too. I think I might have mentioned that once before. But yeah, they thought it was terrible, because here you are, you're in your 20s, and I was a Long Island cupcake. I mean, I really was. It's like I grew up in Suffolk County, so this was a whole different world to me. And you had firemen who really thought they could put their hands on you.
Wow.
Patients, if you had an EDP, it's one thing, but when it's, there's a million stories.
A fellow professional?
Yeah. There's a story of a female paramedic who I know very well, who it was I think it was a fire truck accident or something, and she has this firefighter on the long board, because we boarded everybody. And he grabbed her, and her partner grabbed him. It wound up having a trial and everything, and
wow,
they nothing happened to him. There was witnesses, cops were like, "Oh no, we saw this," and nothing happened.
Interesting. All right, so has much changed today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good news.
I think the world has made it change.
Yeah, definitely. And also, those guys from back then have phased out of the of the department. So, I can say also I've seen some positive changes as well, from the immediate merger when it first happened to now. The attitude, not wanting to do calls and those things are a great improvement.
Right.
Definitely.
Well, I think the not wanting to do calls, a lot of that changed from when they made the promotion to firefighter. So
exactly.
I think there's a squad in Manhattan. Lower Manhattan has a squad that is all paramedics.
Right. So that helped a lot.
Yeah.
At first it was like, well, how is this a promotion? This makes no sense. But a lot of the EMTs that went on to be firefighters kind of changed that. So that's good. That was a positive. But it's a shame it had to be like that. But those experiences from 20 years ago have made us, who we are now. And that's why you're Superwoman now, because, you had to put up with a lot, and some things you shouldn't have had to put up with. So, kudos to you for sticking to your guns.
Thanks.
As a mom of 3, right, you are.
Yes.
You're a critical care paramedic, a supervisor, college grad, all of those things. How were you able to maintain your work-life balance? Because we all know as leaders, that's something we hear a lot from this younger generation coming up. One of the main complaints is my work-life balance. So how do you manage?
I manage because my kids put up with a lot. I don't know that it's balanced as much as that you learn how to deal with each other, especially when I was still going to classes. I was, at one point I was working overnights, and that way I was there for some of the stuff in the daytime. But now, when school started, I went back to days, and school was at night, and they just, I would make a dinner and run out the door to classes. I'd come back, and they're older, so thankfully that was, I think, the only way that this worked, because they're a little more self-sufficient. They didn't need me to give them a bath at night and put them to bed. It was, they still don't go to bed, but they made it easier. But they checked me, because there was a point where I was very much, I would answer my phone to anybody who called me, if I was working, if I was off, whatever. And I had these people looking at me going, Mom, we don't really care about your job right now. We're talking to you. And it was
Okay.
like they checked me over and over to the point where I turn my ringer off and I
All
tell
right.
people, like, you can text me, I'll get to you eventually. But
Taking a stand.
yeah.
And they're also watching you, right? So they're
Yes.
watching, right? Two girls in the sun, and they're watching you go through this journey and going back to school and the other job. You know, we all
Yeah.
have second and third jobs at one point in our EMS careers. At one point I had worked at 3 different agencies. And and they see this stuff and they learn, they pick up on those things. So that these are not bad things to pick up. But you do have to balance it.
You do.
Shout out to them for.
The schooling was actually a big part. Like, I finished my bachelor's because, like every other EMS person, I did dribs and drabs here and there. And at one point, I'm like, you know what? I have kids, and they need to understand that education's important. So at 43 years old, I finished my bachelor's. I was like, all right, now they
Wow.
can never tell me you didn't do it.
That's right. So
Yeah.
now you can demand that of them because you haven't done it. I remember, first of all, I didn't know what work-life balance was. We just did it.
Right.
Right. And, I went to medic school, 2 toddler sons, one and like 1.5. We moved, like forcibly, had to move from an apartment if it was just a bad situation. All of this while going to med and still working full time.
Right.
I worked overnights, I had my wife, so she, did her part with the boys in the day, and I worked the overnights, and I came home, she went to work, and I tried to sleep, but I had them. We made it work. It's 2 years, like 18 months to 2 years. We sucked it up. We made it happen. I don't remember. I don't know if it's a difference in the generations or what. I don't want to pick on any particular generation, but I never went to my boss and complained that they're not helping me with my schedule.
Right.
You pick the schedule that works best for you. You pick the school schedule that works best for you. You make it work, and you get the job done. I think that's just a difference I see, out there now. I never had a conversation with my boss about work-life balance. I don't know about you.
No, me either.
I know back then what our bosses would have said. So.
Like, shut up and go to work. You want overtime.
Exactly. Yeah, because that was leadership, right? I said this before. Our leadership 20 plus years ago was just some overweight guy behind a desk yelling at you to get out the station.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
They were all overweight.
Exactly. And then you fast forward to like current era, and now they're talking about you have to develop people and one-on-one meetings and develop your staff. And I know for a fact they didn't hear any of this stuff coming up.
They did not.
We could talk about things we were told, and nothing about helping me guide my career or anything like that. It was just, shut up, do what you're told, and get out the station. And that was it.
Are you 63 or 62?
Exactly. So it's amazing to see how the field has progressed.
That, and you know what else? The other thing about partners, too. Like,
Yes.
this is who you were working with. And shut up, we don't care about it. Like, figure it out.
Yeah, there's no
And
switching partners.
Switching partners, complaining about partners. Like,
Yeah.
we talk to each other. I mean, I could tell you terrible stories about buying cleaning supplies for somebody and getting to a point where it's like, you smell so bad. We've talked to you so many times, and here's a bag full of like shampoo and soap and whatever with directions on how to use them. Like,
Hygiene.
yeah, it was. I mean, it's mean. It sounds terrible, but it was like that bad.
I've had similar. Yeah.
And now they come up to you and they're like, I can't work with this one because I don't really like their cologne. It's like, what? Spray them with Febreze. Like, don't
Yeah.
really. No.
but your partner is a big part of your day, your career, right? And yeah, you have that bad partner, it could be a nightmare. And those are things also you have to learn how to work with people you don't want to work with or may not like or are different than you.
Yes.
Right? So, then we get into diversity. That was handled way differently a long time
Yes,
ago.
it was.
But, today we're learning about cultural competence, cultural humility, and microaggressions, which I didn't know. Like, it's funny now you hear titles of things like work-life balance. Didn't know what it was back then. We just did it. Microaggressions, I didn't know it had a name. I thought it was just people saying stupid things under their breath. Now they have an official title for it. It's a microaggression. So that's what I was dealing with. I said that to say, diversity is a big part of the discussion now everywhere, and we work together on a committee working, dealing with diversity, and just it's an important topic, and it's just something that I like to see more patience from people, and we talk about asking questions and, don't shun or shy away or make fun of another culture that you don't know about. Ask questions about it. You might learn something.
Absolutely. That's like the best piece of advice, because it's really interesting too. Like when you start to talk to somebody from another culture, or for even just from a different point of view, it's like, oh, wow. Like you not understanding that, or not understanding, not knowing that, like we were touched by like the weirdest people too.
Right.
And it's something why would you think that? Because it's not normal. It's not, you wouldn't have been that person that would have done it.
Right.
So you wouldn't even know that happens.
Right.
Where like all sorts of weird things like that though.
No, definitely. All right, so currently you're working for an organization that operates within the New York City 911 system, right? Mm-hmm. But also as a big player in the facility game, if you will, in the facility side. Are the challenges the same for both? I guess it's more of a clinical. We're getting clinical here.
They're actually very different. It's, when I started, I was, in my mind, I was, a 911 paramedic. It's like I was a city medic, and now you want me to go on an ambulance with all these like tools. They're handing you vents and pumps and whatever. And you're looking at a vent like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this thing? Right. And, in the back of my head, I think the first couple of times on a vent job, I think was the most like terrifying moment of my life. And then like you kind of remember to calm down, and it's like, I have an ambu bag. Oh, I could think, what are they're BVMs now, right? The ambu is a brand. But it's like, I can do this. And it just, those were really scary. And then even doing like some of the more complicated critical care jobs, you're just like, whoa, I wasn't born to do this. This is like, but even that comes back to you, because, like as a supervisor, we get sent on critical care jobs sometimes. And I had one recently that was being vented, paced. They had like 3 different drips, and I'm like, oh boy.
That's what we call a train wreck.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, I haven't paced somebody since like under the Willie B, like what? And it wound up working out fine, The nurse actually messed up a little bit, but we fixed it. And
yeah. Being a paramedic is challenging enough, right? But then there's also another credential, critical care paramedic, which obviously is a higher, skill level, and have they are able to use different equipment, and more complicated equipment on patients, and treat the more very, very severe, critically sick patients. I've gone to a call once in Far Rockaway, Peninsula Hospital. It's not there anymore, right? But we get to the hospital, and the doctor literally was about to break down in tears. He was just like, "Thank God you're here. Just go." And I'm like, "Are you serious right now? You're a doctor. Relax, bro." So
but that's like a lot of their reaction. The ones that are sending them out are like, "Get it, go."
Yeah. And this is one of those classic train wreck like post cardiac arrest, balloon pump. Everything that they could throw on a patient was on that patient. And he's handing it to me. Right. We're leaving a hospital with nurses and doctors and everybody else, and they're handing this patient to me, my EMT partner, to drive 17 miles to
at 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
to North Shore, Manhasset, or wherever we were going, probably there to the CCU. And that's just, it's a huge responsibility. And a lot of times when we're city medics, right, we think, oh, we got this, we're the best. And then you get into, traditionally transport are known as nursing home discharges and take people home. But when you get into the inner facility and the real meat and potatoes of it, it's serious stuff. It is. And I have numerous calls I can recount where it was like, oh my God, how am I going to do it?
Right. You have this little heart attack with every single, I had one, I don't know why I'm laughing. I had one, it was coming out of one hospital, going to a bigger hospital in the same city. And, it was like a post-cardiac arrest, patient arrested like 3 times in the ER, and now they're transferring them, and everything's short of a balloon pump,
Right.
And but then they turn around, they're like, but after the 3rd cardiac arrest, the family signed a DNR. So I'm like, what? So I have administrators calling me saying, if your patient goes into arrest and dies in your ambulance, you have to go back to the sending facility.
Turn around and go back, right.
And I was like, okay, let me make sure they know this before we leave because odds weren't good. And so the doctor's like, this is my cell phone number. If you're coming back, please don't come back. But if you're coming back, please try to drive fast. Here's my cell phone number. Let me know you're coming back. If you come, I don't want you back. I'm like, gotcha. So we're driving, and the grandson's in the front of the ambulance with the EMT. And I think I had another medic back there with me. And, of course, the patient dies. And but she was vented, and she's like on all these drips and everything. And the other paramedic's like, I think we should keep going. I said, I'm not walking into the other hospital with a dead person with a DNR in my hand. Like, no.
Right.
So I call the administrator and then the doctor. And she's like, you didn't make it? I'm like, I'm sorry. So when we showed up, they're like, they didn't know what to do. They're like, how come you couldn't make it? I said, you gave me somebody who was dying.
Right.
Like, it's not my fault. But those are like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If they die in your ambulance when you're on 911, you're still going. You're doing CPR and you're going. And here it's like, all right, we're going to turn these things off now. And it's like, it's creepy.
Yeah, it is. And the same thing with that is community paramedicine, right? When we started doing that. So that was something else that our department started doing, one of the first, I guess, in the East Coast to do it. It was really huge in the West Coast. And what that is it's a program basically designed to treat the patient at home and not transport them to the hospital. So that's what community paramedicine, in a short sentence, is. And as critical care paramedics in our organization, we were the first paramedics to start doing this in the East Coast. And I remember some of those calls, and those were and some of those were end of life calls when you're there and you're on the phone with the doctor, kind of watching the patient, and you can't do anything.
And they want you to give them comfort care.
Yes.
And I was like, am I allowed to do this?
Yeah,
this doesn't, it goes against everything that you know as a paramedic. You're just like, okay, this is comfort.
Yeah, exactly. But that was that was a whole different side, another side.
You have to switch your brain for that one.
Good point. That's it. So we're almost 2 years into the pandemic. What is the impact on the EMS industry today?
I think that today people are still just tired. They worked they worked a lot, and they saw so much death. The amount of death was just something that you can't even put into words. So when you hear people with all their conspiracy theories or politics involved, it's like, no, you don't understand. Those freezer trucks, they were real, So I think that probably has the biggest impact on the EMS workers, where, it's not conceivable. Just when you're pronouncing this many people in a day. Or I can remember when it first started, even it came back and like, I just had the weirdest job. This guy was talking to us and his SAT was 60. And then the other one's like, mine was 30 something. I'm like,
I remember those.
What the hell are you people talking about? It was like the zombie invasion or something. So they, I think that they're all a little bit tired.
Definitely a lot of death.
Yeah.
I remember staff coming to see me like, I just did my 10th cardiac arrest today.
Yeah.
That's those numbers are unheard of. That much death for 20-something, for anyone. But especially go back to you, right? Young you, first in the job, 20-something, bright and cheery, and you just did your 10th cardiac arrest pronounced for the day.
That didn't happen.
Right, exactly. And it's like that's definitely takes a toll on people. We're feeling it industry-wide. There's staffing shortages across the nation. People are tired, like you said, and it definitely has a profound impact on the industry. Even 2 years later, it's reverberating throughout.
I think that when it was happening, when it was at the highest level or whatever, you didn't know how to handle it, and they're looking to us supervisors, the older people, they're almost looking for you to say no, it's going to be okay, and you're just like, holy crap, I don't know if it's going to be okay. It was terrifying.
In your professional opinion, what are some changes that need to be made in this industry?
In this industry, I think that women need to get more power. Yep, I said it. I think that one of the things is we need to get more respect. It's sad to say this many years later that it's still kind of looked at as that, oh, and you're EMS. Like, oh, here's firemen, here's cops. Sanitation still makes more than most EMS people, but...
the salary things.
Yeah. That's why the industry is hurting, because, you have... That's why firefighter is a promotion. That's why people leave to go to police or corrections or
sanitation,
whatever.
Yeah.
Sanitation, that's... If you... I don't know. I can't lift that much anymore, but that's a good job. And I think those things need to change. Maybe, when they talk about licensing, instead of just every 3 years having to recertify, the CME research is a little bit easier, but it's still, you have to go and sit for your New York City REMAC. So
which is 3 years. Every 3 years you get tortured because that's horrible.
Because it's a memorization test, because... In the field, you can open up your protocol, but in the test, you can't.
Right.
So
going back, so you said more women in leadership.
Yes.
Leadership roles.
Yes.
What roles?
Well.
Or all
roles. Right now, in our organization, women go as high as supervisor, and then there's manager, director, AVP, vice president. There's all these other things that have no females, and. It's a shame, because there are females that can do the job that probably could even do it very well. And I think that it's, it's always been known as the boys club, and that it's not just there either.
No, that's industry wide. It's a male dominated field. We're talking about EMS. It's a male dominated field, specifically non-minority males. It's the way I read it, which is a nice way of saying white male dominated industry.
And you just, all you need to do is look, and you see that that's the truest statement around. We've been doing it this long. Like, how is it that we're doing it this long, but you only think that guy can do it? And it's like, it's insulting. So.
Right. And that goes back to the practice, I think, of, your buddies, like when we said the good old boys, or that's my buddy. And it's, that stuff's hard to break. What changed that for me was, at our organization where we're working now, they brought in a consultant years ago, and he said to them in the room, you have to promote the best person for the job. The days of promoting your friends have to end, or you're not going to succeed. And I was in that session when he was doing that. He's now one of our AVPs, but he said that years ago, and I said, if they do this, I have a chance.
I think the focus on diversity and inclusion kind of will help that cause too, And then it's sadly because, okay, you and I have this conversation, but if you go in a different group of people, it's like, oh yeah, they're going to make you because you're a woman, or, and
like, you've heard that?
I had that specifically said to me, and I think that actually hurt me more than anything, because I actually didn't make the complaint about that one either. That was made... I still don't, to this day, I still don't know who complained about it. But yes, I was told, well, that it'll be you because you're a woman and they need to put one somewhere. And I was like, really?
Like, and that's got to hurt, because like, okay, so forget the fact that I'm 30 years in this business, or I've, paramedic, critical care paramedic,
dispatcher,
master's degree, health administration, started committees. The only reason they're going to promote me is because
I'm a woman. Like, come on, man.
And that's in the 2000s.
I took that as a very insecure man that said that to me.
Well, that's usually what it is, right?
Yes.
Even going back to those days, they're insecure, they didn't know how to react around women. Women were seen and not heard, or whatever. And
I was a big mouth. To this day, I'm like, I get told, like, well, you've been a very tough girl always. And I'm like, I was the girl that was quitting. I don't know that anybody knows that, but I was not tough. I was
one and done.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk some stories.
Some stories.
Some memorable stories from your career.
There's like some that stay with you whether you want them to or not. And I call them my ghosts. But I have one, but mine are all from Brooklyn. But the one that was like the only time I ever went to get CISD.
Okay.
The one and only time. It was a bicycle drive-by shooting on, like, I think it was Saratoga, where there's like a little courtyard that goes down in front of this project. And it was 3 people shot. It was, August, and we were the only unit available because everybody was on a shooting in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was everybody had shootings in Brooklyn. And So I was with my partner, Gary. There was this big dude laying on the ground, shot, and I go to him. Gary has this girl who's like, she was shot in the head, but it was like a .22, so it didn't penetrate the skull. It went around. And then the biggest whiner was the guy who was grazed in the arm. He's like, oh, I got shot. And, you know, so Gary's trying to tell him to shut up. He's dealing with the girl, and I'm over by this big guy. The patient was like 6 feet tall, maybe 250 pounds. It's very key to this story. Okay. And so it's this bicycle drive-by shooting, and he was, you know, a big guy, and they said that he was like, they would duck down, and he looked up, and he got like his neck kind of blown open. It was like, it looked like a shotgun or something like that. It was just like chopped meat, and so he was dead. But all these people were yelling his name and like, wake up for the lady and wake up, and like, so it was like this moment of, holy crap, what do I do? Like, there's nothing I can do, but what do I do? And Gary yells across, Tara, what the hell are you doing? Either pronounce him or work on him. Do something. And he might have used some like not nice words. So he's yelling at me. So finally I look up at the cop and I give him, you know, like the time and my shield. And he goes, what do you think? I'm like, what? He's like, is it a boy or a girl? I'm like, what? It's a guy. And he's like, well, what are those numbers? I'm like, those numbers? You need to go ask somebody, you know, like, and I pull a sheet over, and then you hear this screaming and everything. Right. We take the other two to the hospital. We're in Brookdale, and the detectives walk in, and they go, who pronounced the 11-year-old? And we're like, what 11-year-old? Nobody pronounced an 11-year-old. And they're like, no, there was 3 people. These 2 are here, and the one back there, he's 11. And it was like
the big kid?
Big kid was 11, and
man.
So I cried. I think that might be the only one that like just boom, I cried. I was like 11.
Wow.
Like what? And so I was like, I need to go home. I can't do this job. This sucks. And I went home and I called CIS.
Right.
I think it was D then, whatever. But even that was, so I was working
critical incident stress debriefing team.
Yeah. Yep. And I went and I talked to this guy, and it was not really helpful. And
as was my encounter with them, I talked about in episode 2. You gotta hear that one.
Oh, so this is the worst part of the story. I go to work for where we work now because I was working per diem there too. And I was in dispatch, and one of the other female dispatchers comes in. She goes, "How are you doing, Tara? I heard all about that call." I went, "What call?" And she goes, "Oh, you know, my stepdad is the person I talked to, and he was telling me about it." I went, "Really, really?" I thought it was confidential, and I was pissed. I made a complaint.
Oh wait, her stepdad was the CISD person
who told her the entire story. Yeah,
but didn't really help you.
No, it didn't help me at all. Like no, please. I got Monday morning quarterbacked on that one forever.
Always.
And I was like jerky about it. I would wait. I would sit there because everybody like, oh, who pronounces an 11-year-old? Give him a chance. Take him. And it's like, you weren't there. And they're like, oh, well, I heard his neck was open. I would have found the hole, and I would have intubated that. And I'm like, oh, really, superstar? And they're like, what? I go, that was me. Oh, that was you? You know, so.
Yeah. No, that was a big part of the job that was annoying, was that. And early in the career, you get that, and it's like you kind of take it, and it knocks down your confidence a little bit. But we all get that chip on our... At some point, we get to a point where we get that chip on our shoulder, and you...
Yeah, to say whatever you want.
Yeah,
now,
exactly. It kicks in. That's a part of growing up on this job, I guess. We all have that chip, that kind of, you throw it up there.
But there is a community center named for that kid.
Is there?
Now, yeah. For years I looked up. This was like 1998. Wow. I think it was like August. I forget August something. 1998. I have articles. It's just he stayed with me. Yeah, that one broke my heart. 11 years old.
Yeah.
Like I think my brother was like the chubby kid, so like he was the chubby kid, but he was like the gentle giant. They all loved him. I was like, oh, this is killing me.
Man,
so,
that's a tough one. Definitely.
Yeah. But some story. Oh, I told the story with the boot. This is very early too. It was very funny. It was a man under, in one of the tunnels. I think by the Willie B, like somewhere over there. So a man under is a person hit by a train, and there's a foot in a boot, and it's on the platform. Like it got amputated, and So I didn't know anything about subways, and there was this like switch on the wall, and this one guy kept pulling this switch down, and it would like tick back forward, going like. So every time it binged, he would pull it down again. But they all kept saying, "Tara, watch the boot. Tara, watch the boot." And I'm like, why the hell do they want me to watch his foot? Like, who's gonna steal it? And like, really? So it's grossing me out. Whatever. It was, back in mask pants days, they're putting on the mask pants, we're doing everything,
right.
And I would have people, "Tara, watch the boot," and they'd pull this handle. "Tara, watch the boot." And I'm like, what is wrong with all these people? I'm like, they're really weird. So finally, I think the handle got pulled like maybe 14 times, and every time they pulled it, somebody would look at me and tell me to watch the boot. And this one cop finally grabs me by my shoulders, and he goes, "Tara, watch the boot." And he pulls me away, and I'm like, "The boot's right there." And he goes, "No, the boot's right there. It's the metal thing that sticks out for the third rail."
Oh,
I was standing like right next to it. And he's like, "What did you think?" I'm like, "Well, the foot's in a boot." And he goes, "No, you idiot. Like, we're trying to not let you electrocute yourself. That's why they keep pulling the handle. It turns the power off." And I'm like, "What?" So we get up to Bellevue with the guy. And I did still have the foot in the boot, but I watched it the whole time. I felt like attached. And so this lieutenant, I forget who it was, comes flying into the ER. He's like, "What idiots were down in the subway?" And it was us in a Cabrini unit, and that's how long ago it was.
Right.
And we're like, "We were, why?" He's like, "What were you doing down there?" We're like, "Well, we were getting the man out from under the train." "No, what else did you do? There are trains stuck in every station around this borough. Every time they pull the handle, it would stop somebody else." So he's like,
man.
"What were you touching?" We're like, "Nothing." Nothing. We didn't. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, I was watching a boot.
Wow.
So.
Were the people pissed that you guys were taking so long?
Oh yeah, always.
Because I'm gonna tell you about Brooklyn, my favorite borough. I remember doing CPR on an arrest in front of a grocery store, bodega,
Mm-hmm.
and people were stepping over us to go into the store to complete their transaction. I'm like, I don't believe this. I thought I saw it all. They were literally like, "Move out the way. I got to get my stuff." Mm-hmm. Like at least 3 people stepped over us while we were doing compressions on this poor person in the the doorway of the store.
You
like,
should have moved them out of their
Brooklyn,
way.
They don't play. All right, final question. What advice would you give to a 20-year-old Tara about going into EMS?
I think, all right, going into EMS, I think I would tell me to listen more, because, you get to a point where you don't listen to anybody and you think everybody's an idiot. So I think I would listen more. I probably would have told myself to go become a paramedic sooner than I did. 6 years working BLS. You kind of look back now like, wow, how did I think that was it? And I don't know, I guess take less stuff in the beginning, because I took a lot, like being touched and things like that. It's.
That was actually assault.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't.
But back then it wasn't.
It was. Come on, don't be a girl.
Insane. Exactly.
So, and I think that bothers me more, just because of how often it was, and how there was chiefs that would touch you. Like, there was just really a lot of inappropriate things, which I think is what makes me, even now, like, try to teach girls, like, don't let people talk down to you. But yeah, I would tell young me to maybe shut up and listen a little bit more, because.
See, so that's interesting, right? I'll go back to our generation,
Mm-hmm.
and then this generation today. The complaints I get about the new people today is that they don't listen.
No, see?
But we always say, we listened. We were told to sit in the truck and shut up, and that's what we did. But now, like...
I did, but I didn't really pay attention. Like...
Yeah,
I didn't talk, but I didn't really care what they were saying either. So
yeah, I put on my Walkman.
Right, I
Walkman's back there. But just going back, yeah, listen more. I do agree with that. Yeah, I now that you said that, yeah, I didn't listen. I just sat in the truck and shut up.
Right.
That's not listening. That's just do what you're told is not listening if someone's giving you advice. And last one, take less crap. Definitely stand up for yourselves. Yeah, but I think that comes with getting confidence.
Mm-hmm. It
so
does.
because you got to know what you're saying, and if you're gonna clap back at somebody, you got to be knowledgeable in your clapping back. So,
You do. I'll give you that one.
yeah, but absolutely, all good points, and definitely good conversation. Good talking to you, Tara.
You too.
We'll definitely have to do this again. I know there's plenty more stories. I definitely have more, and between us, the friends we have, we'll get through to come by and sit and have some of these conversations.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and you're always welcome here on the Lights and Sirens podcast. And thanks for stopping by.